With all the crazy stuff happening in the world right now, my new channel What's Out There is here to offer hopefully a breather from this all. We will delve into the mysteries of life, the universe and everything in between with the help of short under a minute videos. So please give it a shot and check it out. I will make sure to put a link in the video description. And as always, you can also help yourself by buying a brand new Windows 10 or 11 Pro retail key for the still insane low price of $12.50 only. If you are interested, please follow the link in the video description. It's been nearly 25 years since the 90s era graced us with some of the most iconic PC shooters ever. Regarding this, I would love to do a retro perspective per game, and we're going to handle the following games: Wolfenstein 3D, Blood, Doom, Duke Nukem 3D, Quake, Unreal, Half-Life, Counter-Strike, Redneck Rampage and Shadow Warrior. In today's retro perspective, Wolfenstein 3D. Today we're going to start with one of the most influential 3D first-person shooters ever, Wolfenstein 3D. It's probably not the first ever released first-person shooter, but definitely the most influential one. Before we do a little bit more of a deep dive into the history of this game, I would say let's first start a little bit about what this game, Wolfenstein 3D, is all about. The game was released on May the 5th in 1992 by Apogee Software and FormGen. And the game is about a guy, an Allied spy named William B.J. Blazkowicz, who is stuck in the Hotel California of Nazi prisons, Castle Wolfenstein. So what's the mission? Escape Castle Wolfenstein, the evil clutches of the Third Reich, and show those Nazis who is boss. But yeah, it's not going to be easy, of course, in the game. You need to have weapons, guns you're going to collect during this shooter, and yeah, there are a lot of funny surprises, a lot of funny concepts when you are playing Wolfenstein 3D. The game can be purchased still for a couple of euros, a couple of dollars on Steam, an example, and GOG. So if you're interested, check it out, because usually they are bundled in some great value bundle packs on Steam, an example. So there's always a way to still purchase this game and without having to run it, on DOSBox or any workarounds. It works perfectly fine, an example, on Steam, just out of the box. The game didn't really have a big variety of weapons like an example Doom has or any other modern-ish first-person shooter. You had a knife, a couple of weapons, a pistol, a submachine gun if I remember correctly, and a Gatling gun. That's pretty much it. And yeah, mostly it's killing just Nazi soldier and dogs and some other very special-ish enemies. So what's the objective per level? Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Just find the elevator to the next level and yeah, and square off eventually against a very big special bad boss, which I will not spoil, but it's like a more simplified version of Doom. Well, something cool about this was one of the earlier games of id Software, but nobody less than John Carmack himself. Wolfenstein 3D wasn't really id Software's first rodeo. They had already given us the famous Commander Keen and already had a taste for pixelated adventure. But then they decided, let's make something a tad more intensive. So enter John Carmack, the coding genius who dabbed in 3D gaming and came up with the engine for Wolfenstein 3D. He previously worked in games like Hoover Tank 3D, where you drove a tank, because everyone needs a tank now and then. But this game, Wolfenstein 3D, really entered, I would say, opened the doors for the serious 3D first-person shooters. There were more people who worked in the game, of course. An example, the artwork was done by Adrian Carmack, and no, not related to John Carmack. And the soundtrack was done by Bobby Prince and added layers of atmosphere at that time, well, at least to this immersive world. Wolfenstein 3D was more than just a game at that time. It was definitely a cultural phenomenon. Critics couldn't get enough and players were hooked. By the end of 1995, it has sold over more than 250,000 copies, which is really a huge amount, especially for that time. And of course, at that time, not many people had really a PC for gaming, so they had to use either their dad's PC or their grandma's PC, since having an own PC wasn't really, a normal thing. So it was pretty funny. A lot of family PCs were used or abused for Wolfenstein 3D. What's also a pretty cool fact is that Wolfenstein 3D introduced the sharer model. Maybe you remember that from earlier, especially from the 90s, it was very popular. What was a sharer model? Well, it usually gave you like a taste of the game by giving an example, the first episode for free. I can remember the game Doom had like 3 or 4 episodes, and with the sharer model, it's maybe like an old-fashioned word for just a demo, but yeah, you really get an entire episode for free and not just a single level. So that was definitely different than the demos we know nowadays. Game development was a lot faster at that time, not the 5-6 years sometimes needed nowadays by developers, because in 1992 the prequel / expansion of Wolfenstein 3D, Spear of Destiny, was also released. And later, delayed in 1994, the also quite legendary game Rise of the Triad was released. However, Rise of the Triad unfortunately got overshadowed by, of course, Doom, which was released in 1993 and was definitely more revolutionary in engine than the old Wolfenstein 3D engine. Nevertheless, there are quite a nice list of games being released on the Wolfenstein 3D engine. But of course, since Doom was released in 1993, that definitely did define the new genre of first-person shooters. So, to summarize, why was Wolfenstein 3D so revolutionary? First, the introduction of 3D graphics. It brought through 3D graphics to the gaming world, allowed players to move and interact within a somewhat fully 3D environment. It's the sprites, like the corpses and weapons, still were like 2D, but okay, sure, it was somewhat of a fully 3D environment. Of course, also it was a first-person game, first-person perspective. And why is that so special? Well, before that, a lot of games, like an example, Duke Nukem 1 and 2, were all 2D games. So a fully 3D game like this was very welcome. Not to forget, Wolfenstein 3D had some quite fast-paced action. It was definitely a fun game to play. So also something not to forget, the gameplay of Wolfenstein 3D was pretty good. Technical advancement it had, of course, as well. The game engine was definitely something new and definitely laid the foundation of the other games coming. Well, on top of that, an example, not a year later, Doom. And one of the last things, of course, the sharer model was being introduced with Wolfenstein 3D. So definitely not a game which can be ignored. Wolfenstein 3D was absolutely something in its own league at that time. For the rest, I would say enjoy the rest of some gameplay from Wolfenstein 3D. You can still purchase it on the GOG or Steam. Well, and it's been like configured pretty good for you, so you don't need any DOSBox or any other weird tools. So if you would like to check it out, you can buy the game for yourself for a couple of euros, a couple of dollars. Thanks for watching to this first part of Retrospective with the first game, Wolfenstein 3D.